I'm impressed you found that because I haven't been using that brand for a while. We've been doing this for X amount of years. I got to go a little bit deeper before I decide to completely rebrand or rechange what I'm trying to do. I created business content without really even knowing how to run a business because all I was doing was extracting the best insights from my guests and putting those nibbles out there. My first big move was starting a music podcast. I'm from Rochester, New York. So I started a Rochester music podcast in 2016, pretty much just because I wanted to get into places for free.
Hello, I'm Dustin, PolyInnovator. Today I'm welcoming Ben Albert onto the Poly Tools Creator Spotlight, who is a podcaster, business owner, founder, host of the Real Business Connections podcast, and board-certified master podcast ninja. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Yes, sir. The board was my grandma, just so you know. She certified me, so.
Close enough. It's good enough anyways. But I do think that it's interesting when it comes to podcasting and talking to podcasters, because there's this way of being for the last 20 years. And podcasting's been around longer than YouTube. And while blogging is probably the only thing that's been around as long, if not longer, just the seeing how the evolution of the medium evolved, I think it's been cool.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, nowadays, I hate that I'm saying this. She just had a meme coin and scammed a bunch of people, but the Hawk Tua girl's got a podcast. People don't even know what a podcast is. I think what a podcast is just completely been redefined. It's really just a long-form medium to have conversations, and primarily it's on YouTube now. So it's not what it used to be. It's not like an AM radio show. It could be anything we want it to be in reality.
I mean, honestly, I started doing interviews with video in mind first and foremost, and then audio as the secondary thing.
Yeah, literally the way I get my audio is just extracting the audio from the video once it's complete.
And I've talked to some people on this show about that too, where it's if you want to do even solo content and extract the audio, you want to try to prepare the video with that. If I'm holding up a cup or this box, I'll describe the smart glasses box audibly so someone listening in can know what we're holding up. But that's kind of takes practice.
It's I gotta find it for the notes or something, but I was literally just watching a Cody Sanchez video. Cody's team her team is just incredible. If you look up Cody Sanchez YouTube, CODIE, she had 6. I put up 5 and said the word 6. Did you see that? She had 6 product placements in her video, but it was done so classy and so quick. Like talking about her watch, talking about a tool she was writing with. It was a little much for me, but the entire video was entertaining. It was quick, entertaining, value-driven, but she was adding all these little ads in it, and it was just brilliant. The level we can take it that no one wants to be sold to anymore. But if she just gives this recommendation that takes her 6 seconds in the middle of a 12-minute video, you can just kind of drop those little soft sells. And I'm only bringing this up because I literally just watched her channel, but it's becoming to a point where attention's a commodity, and the ability to hold attention for 12 minutes, hour and a half straight. And then if you can work in, I never freaking sell at all, but if you can work in those little asks, it's a brilliant way to just capture attention and make money as a business owner or a creator as you do it.
And we were talking about just before the call, affiliate marketing on the PolyTools site, and I have affiliate links in the descriptions of my videos too, and they're tools that I actively use. So even just naturally in conversation, I'll bring up a tool like OpenSert, New Link or whatever, and we'll talk about it, and you'll bring up what tools you like, and we'll talk about it. And that's part of the reason why I made this show, because I wanted to nerd out with people about tools. But it's natural, and if people are like, oh, I want to know what he's talking about, they click below, like you're saying too, and it's just kind of naturally flowing.
Yeah.
What got you started as a content creator, Ben?
Yeah, that's such a big question. I mean, I feel like what is a content creator? We could get really meta if we wanted to, defining terms, but what is a content creator? Because a person, this is probably not true, but again, I'm looking at this from a meta perspective. The moment the teacher says, who has an answer to that question? And Ben raises their hand and says, I was actually talking to my grandpa about that question the other day, and I, through my experience, believe this is the answer. They just created for a content. They created for a in-person medium. They told a short story, answered a question for the teacher, but they communicated words that had content and context. It just was an in-person medium. So is content just on social media or YouTube or online? I'm not quite sure. I think we were born content creators. The moment we learned how to speak, the moment we learned how to smile, the moment we learned how to ask a question, we created content. The context was just an in-person conversation with your dad, but you were creating content. Now, the only real difference between a quote-unquote content creator and everybody else is a content creator is choosing a medium to formally place that content. But aren't we all, in essence, a content creator? Whether we produce and expand or do 100 posts a day or never post, we're still creating content every day in our lives.
And even goes back to the storytelling nature of human beings. And I think books are content, obviously, and even like audiobooks nowadays. And we're talking about the evolution of podcasting. And it's just kind of crazy to think about. It's all about different ways of sharing stories and analogies.
And I didn't even answer your question because I guess the first official, again, like a personal brand's content, right? Yeah. The first main social media platform I had was MySpace. One thing I loved about MySpace is like I could upload music, like crappy garage jams from the I wouldn't even call it a band, just my friends and I just playing music in a garage. It was not very good. I could upload music. I could create like a marquee little fun advertisement on top of my page, like kind of learn how to code a little bit. That was before I knew what content was, but then a lot of my friends were in bands and I would help set up their MySpace pages. And then eventually it grandfathered into setting up Facebook pages and setting up Facebook events. And part of why I share this story is like I'm a professional marketer, content creator currently, but I was just promoting stuff because I enjoyed it well before I knew what any of it was. My first like big move was starting a music podcast. I'm from Rochester, New York. So I started a Rochester music podcast in 2016, pretty much just because I wanted to get into places for free. And I didn't realize that was being a content creator. I never really made any money on that end of the business. But now that it's 2025 and I started this as a fun passion project in 2016, I developed a lot of the skills required of me to actually launch products and create a business. So again, I just went out and tried some fun, silly stuff, and you learn a lot along the way.
I think a lot of content creators have some sort of passionate project. Even before my personal brand, PolyInnovator, I was talking about this organization I was building, and I talked to someone just the other day on the show, and they made a newsletter that was literally just recommendations for podcasts, and it's just one of those things where that was a passion project. They wanted to get other people's recommendations, and eventually it forms into this creator life.
That was Ariel.
Yeah.
I was looking at your she was like just came out. That was a great episode. I haven't listened to it yet, so I'm lying, but I know Ariel, so it had to have been a great episode. So add that one to the notes as well. I'm subscribed to her newsletter, and I just subscribed to yours because I was like, what the heck? This guy's doing some cool stuff. I need to dive deeper with Dustin, man.
Well, and it's one of those things with PolyTools, I made that as a passion project. I love digging into these rabbit holes about tools. And I found myself making a list and wanting to share like the Airtable with people. And people need that visual part of things. Like at least most people do. Some people really appreciated the database, but they had to be like big nerds like me. And so I realized, okay, let's pivot and make this into a real site for people to actually go to and play around with. And I was already doing the newsletter for content anyways. And so I just kind of merged those two ideas.
You do content consulting in that end of the business as well. The only reason I bring it up is because you have this big database that I looked at it for 5 minutes and was immediately excited and overwhelmed. Like, how am I going to try all this stuff out? I would gladly, I got to figure out what problem and why we would have the conversation, but someone like me would gladly have a conversation with you where you go, this whole data, go have fun with it. But these are the 3 tools that you can use today in your current process to optimize it. And since you have knowledge of all of them, you have the capacity to do that. So that's why I brought it up. I just think it's a crazy good business model because there's so many options out there. How do we sift through and choose what actually is going to work for us? I don't have a good answer to that.
Yeah, no, but a little tidbit there, just kind of adding on. One plan I am thinking about doing is trying to make a post for every category. Here's the top 10 tools of this category, which will at least kind of narrow things down. a really good website called Tool Finder. They had a really cool model. They're technically, I guess, a competitor in a way, but I've always just tried to share the love and tell people to go look at their site too. And they had really cool ways of like they made a lot of posts trying to help you find what tool is the best thing for you. I wonder if they're going to go down the consultancy route down the line too, but I've definitely done some social media coaching and tool coaching at times, and especially for knowledge management, which is my other brand.
And whether or not we call to pick Dustin's brain, all the freaking tools right there for us so we can go have some fun. I literally bookmarked it because I'll take about 5 hours straight and just try stuff. Because it's
I would
hard.
definitely suggest going into each category and just like scrolling through and see what you like. I need to add more information to each one, but yeah.
Anyways.
Back to the questions here.
Yeah.
How did the Real Business Connection podcast come to be?
Yeah, we kind of touched on the birth of me podcasting. So I started a Rochester music podcast because I wanted to get into places for free. Then when the pandemic hit, I was an executive for a marketing firm. I had just started this role, so I was the last one in, first one out. COVID pandemic, we all went through that. And I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur. I didn't think of myself as a content creator. I had no Bezos or Gary Vee or Brene Brown or Oprah on my wall. Like, I was a music guy. I was Music Ben. I was like the music promoter. But Music Ben was unemployed, broke, and technically non-essential. Like, they shut down all the entertainment industry in New York, and it bummed me out. This is a whole different side discussion, but entertainment and music was a big part of what made me happy. And when that was stripped away, it was like, what do I do now? I can't see live music. So I had to make a change. Your back's against the wall. And I kind of transitioned from Music Ben. I actually still kept the music podcast going for a little bit, but to Business Ben. And Business Ben is an entrepreneur. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was or really what a CRM was or even how to run a business, but I knew what podcasting was. So I started a Rochester business podcast. First, music was Rochester Groovecast. This was called Rochester Business Connections. At the core of the reason I called it Business Connections was because I needed some. And the podcast was meant to do three things. One, it was my number one networking tool. Like, it was the best way for me to meet people. Two, I had the willingness and humility to know that I was the dumbest person in every single room. I had never started, launched, ran a business. So it was a great way for me to learn and get free consulting. Free consulting from brilliant business owners and leaders right in my hometown that have done things that I haven't been able to accomplish yet. And the third thing was it was a good content creation tool. So a lot of people talk about creating content, personal brands, what to post. I didn't know what to post or what to say. I just found someone who was smarter than me and posted what they said. I posted clips of them. I posted live streams of them, like LinkedIn Lives of them. I posted graphics of my favorite quote from the episode. So I didn't know what to post. They told me what to post. I created business content without really even knowing how to run a business because all I was doing was extracting the best insights from my guests and putting those nibbles out there. So Rochester Business Connections, there's still a Rochester segment. Since then, we've rebranded to Real Business Connections just to have more of a worldwide global capacity. But it all started with just an idiot trying to learn business. And the beauty for me, and I'm sure someone's talked about this, and if not, it's been said before, all I really did is document the journey. It's 2025 right now. I started that podcast in November of 2020, and it wasn't very good. It was just local leaders, people that are kick butt, but it wasn't my best interviews. But I have a whole documentation of where I was then, where I am now. Ben still kind of doesn't know what he's doing in business. Like, there's a lot to learn.
Don't sell yourself short.
But I've came along. I mean, nowadays, like, I've replaced my income. I'm completely self-sustainable. I feel like I'm kicking butt, but I still have the humility to know that this conversation and pretty much any day of my life, just pick up your phone, I can learn something new. So I don't have it all figured out yet, but it's a long journey. It's a fun journey too. That's why podcasts like this are so good.
Yeah, none of us have it fully figured out, but a lot of people like us can try to help others get farther along on the process too.
I will tell you this, Dustin. There are people that have it fully figured out, and you know what they're doing? They're selling you a product.
Yeah.
The only person who has the exact solution to your problems, on the back end, they're just trying to sell you something. If you have humility, none of us know jack squat compared to what we could know and accomplish with a little more time and effort.
Well, and you mentioned you have multiple programs there too, and that kind of made me curious because something I've talked about on my both shows, but mainly this show, and a lot of other podcasters don't really do this. And I agree more with you. On my other show, I have 2 series. I have my solo stuff and the interviews, and they go back and forth, but they're on the same RSS feed. You have 6 programs, and so how do you manage all that? Mind you, probably like a tool, but also how do you manage it within the feed as well?
Yeah, so it's not as cool as it sounds. I used to put out 5 episodes a week. Now I'm doing 1 a week, but they are different segments and they have different RSS feeds. So I'm lucky enough that my hosting provider allows me pretty much unlimited feeds where I set up an RSS feed for each segment, but they're not all weekly programs. So I'm not spitting out 6, 7, 8 episodes a week, but I have different segments, and I don't even know how many there is anymore, but simply put, there's Rochester, New York only, there's international, there's short form 15-minute Fridays, which always ends up being 20 minutes, but the concept is 15. There's solo Ben, there's Ben on a panel, there's Ben hosting panels, and then I haven't done it in a while, but I used to call it Real Hits, where I rebroadcast other podcasters. So I would replay their podcast. Sometimes it was me, maybe a guest on your show, or just a podcast I love. So if you look at it, long form, short form, panel, Ben's a panel, he's hosting the panel. It's all over the place. And then I set up RSS feeds to make it a choose your own adventure. So it's all real business connections, but it's meant to be a choose your own adventure for the listener, with the goal being that they just want to take the ride, the magic carpet with me. But if they don't, and they just want Rochester, New York, there's a feed specifically for them.
I was looking at your Spotify and I saw like just it interleaving back and forth. That's partially why I asked too.
Yeah, it's all over the place. I've got different color scheme, different logo, different episode art for every single segment. But I do that because when you're going through the RSS feed, I want every episode to speak to you. I don't want it just to be a boring, nothing boring about it, but a boring brand where I'm using the word boring wrong, but it's just the same kind of look every single time. My feed, every episode has a different look, and you do that intentionally. I don't know psychologically if it's working or not. It's just more fun that way for me, for every episode to look different from the next.
I definitely understand that mindset. I even have a video talking about that for this show, not to go too much on the tangent, but every creator I have on, embodies a sort of different type of content. They might be more of a podcaster, more of a YouTuber, more of a blogger. Maybe they're more automation and kind of all of the above too, or something like that. And so I have different colors based on that creator's response. And so like, for example, if you identify more as a podcaster, you probably have more of a purple background, dark purplish. The YouTuber would be more red. I put kind of goldish orange for bloggers. And so you can scroll through, and if you just want to listen to the podcasters, you know what color to look for. So it's very similar.
I don't get to be blue.
Well, I mean, depends on how you answer this next question.
Well, I want to add, if someone's listening to the audio, this works well for me when I'm not in my studio, but I'm wearing a blue shirt with a blue, blue walls with a blue custom episode art. So I like to wear red or something else, but it's like blue is apparently the color of the day. So let's see how I answer this question though.
Yes. Out of the 3 pillar content type, written, audio, and video, what is your favorite to make?
To make non-biasly?
Yeah, well, everyone has kind of an anchor towards that. I mean, obviously you started with podcasting, so you might be more into that. But some people start off as a podcaster and really like writing newsletters, and they find a love for that. Or they really get into YouTube once they transition from just audio. So it just kind of depends.
It's the answer to the question's video. And the reason is for very lazy reasons. I don't record many monologue, just me on video. I like creating content where it's just a conversation. It could be an interview, it can be a conversation, it could be shooting the breeze. That's the easiest form of content, and I can easily extract the audio from it easily create a transcript. But what the content form I'm best at is short form writing. I love short form writing because I don't know if anyone's noticed this. I haven't really had too many flub ups today. But if you look at my LinkedIn, I'm a great writer. I don't always process quick enough to get the words out that I would have if I had it perfect. So I love writing because I can use the exact word and feeling that I want for that interaction. But I love video because, Ben can write, but I just like to have conversations, and whatever comes out, comes out. And then we can repurpose that into any kind of content we want.
And so you start off podcasting, and you're definitely very well in that podcasting world. You like doing video, you like doing written. What I would probably do in that case is give you like the gray, black, dark background that's all three.
Cool.
Yeah. So just kind of talking better there. I mean, we could always talk about if you want a particular color afterwards, so we could work on that.
I want whatever color you think's best. So here's the thing. Ben I just call myself Ben on purpose to like kind of prove an example. Ben likes talking about himself. Who doesn't like talking about themselves? But it's never about me. Like it's about the audience, and it's hopefully about the aha moments we can create for the audience. So it's not about what color I think's best or what story I think's best or what medium I think's best. It's really just about getting to know the audience and trying to serve them. So you know your audience better than I do. This is your show. I would always want the creator, like the person, the host who brought me, like gave me the freaking pleasure of being on this mic, for you to choose. Now I can have my opinions, but at the end of the day, as a creator, I'm not stuck to one thing. I'm willing to constantly evolve and become a chameleon based on what the audience is asking for. The one caveat, though, is being authentically yourself still. I don't want to like come and be a puppet for somebody else. But I could care less about color. I could put on a purple shirt. I could put on a tie-dye shirt. It's all good to me.
I also want, the other question was back to those programs as well. You said they all have their own RSS feed, but when I was looking at the Spotify, they're all in one feed. So do you have like a mega feed that has both? Okay, that's what I was going to ask. That's a really cool concept that no one's talking about.
Yeah.
It's like combining them into one, but also having kind of an octopus, like having multiple for each individual.
Correct. It's the Real Business Connections Network. And then they're all there's not even a podcast called Real Business Connections. It's Learn, Speak, Teach, 15-Minute Friday, Rochester Business Connections, those kind of things, right? In a perfect world, they'd all be their own brands and they'd all be knocking it out of the park. But then honestly, I'm nothing for no one because I'm too spread out on too many brands. So I've been questioning my own strategy. And I've been just focusing on the Real Business Connections name for obvious reasons. It's just a brand that's simple and pretty well understood. So there's Balbert Marketing, which is Ben Albert Marketing. That's me, personal brand. There's Grow Getters Only. That's the community brand. And then Real Business Connections is kind of the agency brand. But then there's all these sub-brands that I actually think just confuse people. So we'll see what happens. But I just like creating stuff. Like, for example, Learn, Speak, Teach. I just literally took the Google color palette and created a brand around that color palette. And it's my prettiest brand. I didn't have to come up with the colors. They were already perfect.
So you definitely love building brands. It's obvious in this case. But I also wanted to kind of talk to you about this too. It's like the PolyTools brand is a sub-brand of my personal brand.
Right.
A lot of brands in that sentence. And so like I have my umbrella, but then underneath there I have the swimming stuff, I have the PolyTools stuff, the gaming stuff. And so for you, the umbrellas at Real Business Connections, you have all these different sub brands underneath, or like really you have all these different octopus-like arms. And I feel like there's two angles to here. There's the modern content creator angle, and then this might be kind of me projecting, but there's also the polymathy angle.
Yep.
And if you like doing many different things, I think the way you're doing it is the process I went through too.
One thing that I stumbled into it wasn't super intentional, is everything I do is kind of still the same thing. It's business and personal growth. I'm a huge music advocate, music fan. I could talk about music all day. I no longer host that music podcast. I'm about to go to dinner with my girlfriend and friends. I love food. I've thought about a food blog. I get weird in the weeds, like cults and studying cults and human psychology, huge random thing that I loved. Like I'm binging on cult content all the time. I don't have a podcast on all of them. I've
Yeah.
thought about it. One issue there, though, is unless you have the team to make it possible, the boring business, Ben, is like, if I do all these things, I'm either going to burn out, only have 20% juice for each of them. So I've had to, I don't even know if this is a good thing. I could actually use you or the listeners' feedback. I've had to kind of tame that excitement and try to get laser focused just on business and personal growth because they kind of go hand in hand. But I still have these interests. They're still part of me. I'm just not building entire ecosystems around them.
This is actually what my personal brand's about, knowledge management and organizing different areas of interest, because I talk about polymathy with PolyInnovator. And one of the things I talk about is managing your phases. And each phase is an area of interest or area of life that you're working on. And I definitely think that phases sometimes either have an end or they have like a capstone. So, for example, I have a swimming phase. I had wrote a swimming newsletter that's leading up to the release of a book. And once that book is out, that phase is now capped off. I don't have to do anything else for it anymore. That funnel is already there. And if I want to continue it again down the line, I can restart that phase. So you can kind of think of it like, is this interest big enough where you want to keep it going alongside, real business connections? Or do you want to have something along the lines of something temporary? It's only going to be years long. And batching has been helpful for me because I'm trying to do 3 channels at once. And so by batching things out, I feel like that's been very managing my energy better.
I'm so sorry I'm drawing a blank, but there's a creator who he basically will do something for a year and then write a book on it. Like he lived biblically for a year was the big one that like blew my mind. Like he followed the commandments to the T. Just like he goes way all in. But as a journalist, he does something for a year, writes a book, and I guarantee he integrates some of those experiences. I mean, your experiences never disappear. I guarantee he integrates some of it, but he moves on to his next experiment.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of Matt Davella, too. He would do that not for a year, but for a month. He'll do like a 30-day fasting, a 30-day whatever challenge.
A month's fantastic, but I actually don't think a month's long enough to actually fully absorb anything. It takes a little more time. Like if you're disciplined on something multiple hours a day for a year.
Well, and I've been listening to the book, The 12-Week Year, and I think that even just a quarter of a year is actually a pretty decent amount of time that most people do not think about. They always think about the day and the year, and then sometimes if they're really trying to be like productive, they'll get into the weekly and monthly levels. But usually it's like, what can I do today and what can I get done in a year? And so they overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade. So people often forget the decade thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about the different scales.
And that's part of the problem, and that's why like I'm okay being wrong, but sometimes I suppress interests or I don't focus quite as much on them because we underestimate what we can do in a decade with focus. If I get too off the beaten path, I just know myself. Like I will go on tangents and then nothing gets done to its full capacity. And then I get angry at myself because I know I could do better. But the problem was I was trying to do 11 things at once. So I have to choose one and kind of sunset others for the time being. I don't know if this is correct or not, but it's just my practice because I've been thinking about like, what am I going to do with my business? But I'm like, I've only been doing this for X amount of years. I got to go a little bit deeper before I decide to completely rebrand or rechange what I'm trying to do.
Interesting. You mentioned how you signed up for the PolyTools newsletter. I think you would also like the Polymathy newsletter as well on the other website. I'll just send it to you because I talk about a concept called juggling versus serialized. And that's kind of what we talk about in that series is how do you manage your time? Do you do one thing right after the other or do you try to juggle many things at once? And I think both are viable. It's just the juggling sometimes takes a little bit longer. You end up doing more things in that time span anyways. And also you have to deal with the societal norm saying you should narrow down your focus and niche down, as the content creators say. And that's not always the case for everybody. And it's interesting, like you said, staying true to yourself. If you think that you should be talking about cults because you're really interested in it, I'm the same way with traveling stuff. I really want to get into like travel content and everyday carry and travel bags and make like a newsletter about it. But I have to kind of put that off for now until I'm ready to, like, once I get my other stuff done, then I'll work on that too.
You
It's kind
know,
of balanced.
no, it's such a good point because it's such a common business concept, SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares if I don't reach my goal?
Yeah.
Now, time is an interesting commodity because you don't know quite how long you're going to live, but the assumption is it's going to be quite longer than you currently are. And there's this like urgency that if I don't achieve X, Y, and Z by A, B, and C date, that it's some sort of failure. But really all life is a succession of our experiences. So I might be less focused and accomplish less in a smart period of time, but I have a great fulfillment in my life and I have a ton of fun. Like if someone's vision is to be a billionaire, it's going to take, honestly, I would never want that.
Yeah.
What is required? I'd rather spend more time with my family, travel more, eat really good food, do things I've never done before, go study Colts for no reason, than put 16 hours a day on one thing just to attain something that I don't even get the benefit of using that asset because I get old and just spend it on medical bills and then give it to charity. I don't know. I'm kind of verbal processing right now, but what's more important? Like just enjoying the experience, knowing that you have the capacity, the commodity of enough time that you'll get where you need to go? Or is urgency more important to achieve it quickly and then go get something else? I actually think the more holistic, I'm a hippie, more that like just enjoy the experience approach is a better way for me to live. And what's crazy is I start to attract some of the things I need in my life anyways, just by being open to experience, keeping my eyes open. If you have too much tunnel vision, I miss opportunities, I miss interests all the time. I'm verbal processing. I don't even know if this makes sense, Dustin, but that's kind of how my brain works.
I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I've come to some similar conclusions because I thought a lot about this too. Like I said, my other brand is talking about being holistic. Maybe not so much in the hippie sense, but I could definitely get the being true to yourself and being more along the lines of what you want to experience in life. And I think that's important for content creators because we do get caught up in the vanity metrics and just kind of bring it back to the ideal here. I think that like, because I know you and I could keep going on tangents like this, and maybe we will anyways. But the idea of being a modern content creator, I think, is just a matter of pursuing every avenue you can and being an opportunist. And something you said earlier too is about like being adaptable and changing things. And the TikTok ban comes to mind. Mm-hmm. And even if it came back, and even if it goes away again, I'm no longer as sad about it. I said my goodbyes to TikTok when it happened last week or whatever it was. And now it's back, but it feels different. And as a content creator, I spent 7 years on there. Oh. I want to be, attached to it. I want to have like that home. But I'm also kind of agnostic because I know that if you put all your eggs in one basket, like a lot of TikTokers did, and it goes away like it did, you're screwed. And a lot of people were screwed. So they had no Twitch streams. They had no YouTube channels or Instagrams or whatever. And so this kind of leads me to a good question for you because I was really curious what your answer on this. How do you think we could be a one-man marketing army as a solo creator?
Yeah.
That is still one of your profiles, I think, too.
Yeah, well, that's actually, I'm impressed you found that because I haven't been using that brand for a while, but the concept was I would come in and be hands-on. The answer to the question is you build a team, you build a network, you bring people in, you delegate. When someone hired me for marketing, I was the one-man marketing army, and they would always come to me and I would hold them by their hand and strategize and walk to the goal with them. But I had a whole team of freelancers behind me simultaneously. So the answer to the question is if you really want to be a one-man marketing army or a one blank, like if you want to be the person achieving the goal, it's kind of like a bait and switch because you're never the only person achieving the goal. You build a team around you, but it's your job to be the visionary, the leader. You're the one maybe stepping up for the swimming meet, but you've got a trainer, you've got all these other variables in place that allow you the capacity to show up and do your best job. I think it's great that you brought that up. I haven't used One Man Marketing Army in a few years. I think the website still exists. I don't even know, to be honest with
I
you.
must do, because I think I found it. I tend to do a deep dive more so on the other show because it's about polymaths, but even on this show,
Yeah.
I try to make sure I do my due diligence, and out of respect for you as the
Thank
guest
you.
for coming on, and try to see if I can come up with any unique questions. This show, I have some, like, what got you started as a content creator? Like, I'm going to ask each person that question, but I want to try to put in other questions in there that are more unique. And you bring up an interesting topic. I kind of was thinking the one-man army would be like, hey, you are doing it all. You are being polymathic. You have all the skills yourself. There's also certain cases. Oh, sorry.
I mean, I do and I don't.
Yes.
I have
But
a
that
lot
also
of the
comes into
skills.
automation.
Yeah.
Like virtual assistants and maybe even like AI agents now too. That's kind of where I was going to lead into, but now I'm trailing on. What are your thoughts on that? Because there's the virtual assistants and freelancers, but there's also AI.
Yeah. I'm not an expert at AI. I have a background in copywriting. I've studied human behavior. Currently, everything I do still requires a human editor. I don't know if it'll get to a point where it doesn't, but I use AI more as like my best friend assistant. I'll give you a really simple example. So I was just at PodFest, incredible conference, and there isn't a lot of big name keynotes. So there's a couple things that could make my stats wrong. A big name keynote's going to have more attendees, or if you promote your talk a lot, you might have a lot of attendees. But what I looked at specifically was the app would show me how many people registered going to each talk. So in this system, it'll give me a number of how many people, whether they attended or not, whether they liked it or not, how many people registered as going to that talk. So what I did is I took all the titles, I went through each of them individually, and eventually the AI will probably just do it without me manually having to do anything at all. But I went and I looked at what talks had the highest attendance rate. I took the top 25 and I copy pasted the attendance number and the title all on one page. And then ChatGPT, which is the best friend and assistant that this would have taken me like 2 days back in the day to do all this. It went and it sorted all the talks in the top 25, top to bottom, based on the amount of people that said they were attending. Then I took it and I had it break down why it thought those talks had the best engagement rate. And it was I wish I had it right in front of me, very simple stuff. Like literally 4 out of 5 of them had a legit number in it. So 5, what was the talk? It was the number one. It was an SEO tips talk, but it was 5 unconventional SEO strategies to something overnight, your podcast overnight. So it was 5 SEO. So we know what it is, 5 SEO strategies overnight. So this is going to happen overnight. It had like all these little things. And the ChatGPT created a whole report for me. And then what I did is I took my current speaking topics, I rambled about my interests, and I said, using the fundamentals we just created together, give me 50 topics that I could give a talk on. And then I had it rank the topics, and like we were just collaborating all day. But what it came down to is now I haven't even updated my website yet. Now I have 10 brand new topics that I want to do more research. I didn't do a ton of research, but this gave me a little bit. I know based at least a podcasting audience for creators, PodFest is very much like an independent creator conference. I know that these talks will resonate with that audience. So next PodFest, next YouTube video, next anything, pitching myself to be on a presentation, I can use one of these talks that the data already proved to me there's a high probability that it'll work.
And you could also use like Cursor AI to help you rebuild the website, so you have an assistant that way. But those topics you found, you could even tweak them a little bit for YouTube videos. And so you could pivot over to the YouTube world, or you could pivot into the blogging world if you wanted to, or something like that. The numbers doesn't surprise me. I have a buddy of mine, Rocks Codes, who is building flightcast.com, which is like a video podcast hosting platform. And he has a talk that he's doing right now at different conferences. And it's like 101 content creator tools. And again, the whole number idea is what came to mind. I actually had a question here about PodFest that I didn't send to you because I was like, I added it after the fact. I
Okay.
wasn't able to go.
Yeah.
So how was it too? Obviously, what you said was really cool, and I don't want to like leave that topic, but I'm curious to see your experience with the event itself.
It was fun. It's a great event. There's a lot of independent creators, which is fantastic. The one thing that experiences like this, you can never take it away. It's hard to quantify. But I showed up, I got my badge, and I actually learned this thinking about how this all happened. If you're bored and want to meet, not bored, but you want to meet people, or you're just hang out either towards the bar or right where people get their badges. Because it took me 4 hours. I'm not making this up. It took me 4 hours to get my badge and make it to the expo hall area.
Yeah.
Because I just kept running into people. I really ran into one person who introduced me to someone. Me and that person talked for 45 minutes. They knew someone who I also knew, and it took me 4 hours to get to the expo hall.
I try to be that person that introduces someone else to another person. I like being that super connector when it comes to conferences. I've gone to podcast movements, and so like I get what you're saying with the whole PodFest, and you just go over there and you start networking with people, and then you're ping ponging between different boom, 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 boom.
Well,
boom.
it's hard not to have like you're gonna have FOMO in one way or another. Because another thing that happened is I spent 6 hours straight just going to talks. It's kind of a choose your own adventure, but I love when conferences have that. A lot of people, we're all similar. A lot of people are open-minded. They're friendly, that you can get sucked into conversation for hours, or for whatever reason, you're not there for that element of it. I talked twice, and the biggest bummer was there was like 5 talks going on at any given time. So it was almost like too much to learn from. So you kind of have to kind of pick your adventure, and if you're interested, it was a kick butt contra. Pod movement was a little more corporate, more industry.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people from NPR and bigger brands. PodFest was a lot more independent and small brands. If you're offering a solution for like big time podcasters, I mean, it's again, like podcast movement might be more for that. PodFest was great just to like talk to other creators that are creating, and a lot of them didn't have big brands, but they're in the mud learning how, and those are my people, man.
Yeah, same. That's why I was really disappointed to miss it, because I wanted to be in the trenches again with those people. I went to podcast movement because I was able to, subsidize some of the costs.
Yeah.
But it's also frustrating to me that a lot of these events don't take the speakers and post it to YouTube. I get they want to make it a little bit more privatized, and so you can have like, okay, here's why you should. Yeah. But after a year or even half a year, I think it'll be a great way to start marketing for the next year's event by taking those videos, posting them once a week to YouTube, and then put them into like tools like Opus or whatever, chop it into like 1,000 clips that you can then post over the next 6 months.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I don't know their rules. Obviously, they're selling replays, but a great tool, if I was a promoter in this scenario, is I'd say there's I don't know if an NDA what it's called, but you're not allowed to disclose this talk publicly for 6 weeks or 6 months. 6 months seems more reasonable. And then it's all yours. The one thing I ask is tag us in it.
Yeah.
So I can post keynote PodFest movement at PodFest movement right in the title. I can have all these shorts with a little nudge to podcast movement or PodFest. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think systematizing it where you can sell the recordings and someone has exclusive access to all of them is great. But I'd also send the individual recordings to the creators and give them a system as to how to share their recording, because then they're going to start drawing their audience in. And promoting an event's not easy. It is literally, it's an annual event. It starts the week after you're done with the current one.
Well, and even if you can't post the full-length keynotes, you could post clips, theoretically. I think that should be a loophole in a way. I think that actually kind of does work. And one way I actually made friends at NAB last year, the National Association of Podcasting. They had a whole creator area, and I found some cool people who were presenting, and I was in that area. And so since I knew these creators, I took pictures of their speech. I even took a couple clips for a couple of them, not speech, but their panels. And then I was able to give it to them later. And I actually made friends with some of them. And one of them I actually even had on the show a few months after that. And it's one of those things where, like, as a fellow creator, if I'm on stage, I want pictures of me. And of course, the event's taking cameras and stills, but they're not going to send it to you for another like multiple months after the event finishes.
Yeah.
So if you can be that person for that creator, you might be able to make a new friend that way.
I'm a huge fan. I call it creation-driven networking. We could go all day on just this one topic, but short version is I like to create content and network, find mutual ways to collaborate. A podcast isn't a simple example of it, but if you're a photographer, take pictures, walk around with a scan code, give people access to all those pictures afterwards. If you're a videographer, take short clips. Like 6-second reels are crazy on Instagram right now. I don't use TikTok that much, but take short videos and then people can post just a little bit of text over that video and boom, you have freaking content. If you're a graphic designer, I still do this, not quite as much as I'd like. I take down my favorite quote from a talk, and now I have a designer that helps me with it, but we'll create a graphic from that and say, Dustin, this was my favorite quote from your talk. It's yours. If you like it, are you open to me tagging you and we can collaborate on social media? I call it creation-driven networking. It's just networking where creation is the reason that you're networking. It's not necessarily to do business. It's not to hand out business cards. It's to create something. So if you're a creator, you don't even need permission to create something. Go in and do what you said and do what I added there and just create something and hand it to someone. And the relationships are priceless.
I mean, that's why I do these interviews. I literally wanted to talk shop with other creators and network with other creators. I'm not trying to over monetize this show or something like that, even though I guess this show I could get away with like having a mid-roll or post-roll ad or something. But at the end of the call, once I post it, I also toss each interview into Opus, and then I give you the Opus link, so you could use any of those clips.
I was going to ask for that.
And and that way you could post on your own socials, and you have your own cool content to share. But then I try to do this more, but I try to do collaborator posts on Instagram. So I'm not good. I always forget to do that, but that's one way that, like you're saying, to take the content a little bit further and keep that connection going after the call.
I don't have a perfect system because people often don't click it. But if you can preempt that you're going to set up a collaborative post and the person you're collaborating with has a far larger reach than you, it's mind blowing. Where I don't try hard on Instagram, but I'll get 10 comments, a few hundred views, and then I'll collaborate with someone and that'll be 10 to 20x just because their name's on it. Why not take that to your advantage? And why not, for example, if you notice someone posts collaborative posts a lot, that already gives you the data that they're probably going to accept yours. And then you can actually strategically reach out and say, I'd love to have you on your my podcast. We get like 20 euros an episode. Would you be open to doing that and collaborating? And then you get the yes beforehand, you do the podcast, and then on the back end, they'll accept your collaboration and you'll get a greater reach for both of you. So you can this is part of why I like studying cults. It's just taking human behavior and then systematizing it for good when cults do that the opposite.
There's a video you should watch. I don't remember what channel this is, but it's talking about dark gurus. Like,
there's a lot of those.
What is a famous one that I'm trying to think of? The guy with the glasses with the Ferrari in the library, in the garage, he had a 30-minute ad.
Tai Lopez,
yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty good example. I mean, I don't even think he's that dark or anything like that, but he definitely had that, or even Dan Locke or something. But I love studying their mindset and then turn it into something good and not manipulative kind of thing, and try to make sure I don't get manipulated too when it comes to some of these creators.
Now that I've seen what all these quote unquote dark gurus do, it actually makes me more mindful that when I choose to work with someone, it's not because they manipulated me with some tactic. It's because they're a real guy and gal that I care about and I want to work with. So I think being educated on some of the tactics are great. And as long as you're not using them in Machiavellian ways, it actually, people get scammed all day long. We could go on such a long tangent, but like there's a multi-billion-dollar industry just on scamming people. Huck to a Girl just put out a meme coin. It's nothing but a rug pull scam. Anyways, soapbox.
Yeah. Well, I know we are kind of sort of running out of time here, and I have 2 to 3 more questions I want to ask you
I'll
here.
go quick.
And then, so one of my favorite questions to ask is, what are the tools you like to use for creation and repurposing?
I don't use a ton of tools. I use Opus all the time for shorts.
Okay.
I like the tool Auphonic. Do you know Auphonic?
I've heard of it. I think it's probably on PolyTools, actually.
It's been around forever. It's an audio leveler, and they'll also do video leveling. So what happens is I can upload my video podcast to Auphonic. I have all the settings already pre-in. It'll level all the audio, make it sound good, and then it'll extract the audio and it's the video, and then it'll extract the audio. So audio is upload it, boom, I have audio and video. And if you listen to my podcast feed or my YouTube, everything's always the exact same volume. Each guest are the same volume. So those are my 2 big ones, making it sound good and look good, then using Opus for content repurposing. And then I'm such a layman. It's just using ChatGPT as my assistant. I program a ChatGPT for myself. I program all my clients. I create a GPT for them. And I use that as like my co-pilot when I write and create long form or even short form written content. And I guess those would be my big 3.
I like that. I definitely would look into Perplexity, by the way, as kind of like a step up from ChatGPT, because it also has
I've heard such
GPT
good things.
in it.
It's so funny. ChatGPT just broke it to... There's a value in getting to market quicker, because I'm one of those people that once I get comfortable with a tool, I'm sometimes like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I know that ChatGPT is kind of at the bottom of the potato.
Well, and that's why Perplexity is great, because you can pull from whatever AI you want to use, like Gemini or GPT. And I'm glad you mentioned Auphonic, because I forgot about it. And I found that, I told you before the call, my microphone's been going in and out. Hopefully it hasn't gone through it in this interview. But I had a video that I needed to save, essentially. So I tried putting it into Opus, because they can technically do up to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And they have an audio enhancing feature.
Okay.
And I guess it's more for normalization or something like that. But it wasn't able to fix the dips. And so I needed to find another tool, because Adobe Podcast charges for videos. And so Auphonic doesn't charge for 2 hours each month. And so okay, maybe I can actually toss this video in there and fix it without having to manually adjust every single sentence.
We can talk about it more offline, but even if you want, just send me the file and I'll upload it using the account I already pay for. And then I'd love to compare the 2. Or if this came out better than expected, take one that you had some dips in. And I just would love to compare the 2 just as the experiment to see how well it actually does.
Then you can contact Auphonic and be like, hey, I got this cool little video for you. Here's the
And again, thinking as a creator, then I can take it and walk through the process and then create a video, and on the back end have an affiliate partnership with Auphonic where I mentioned and maybe they run ads on my show. There's so many ways we can get creative. We're going to, you said 3 questions. It's going to be about 20 minutes per question. So,
well, I guess one of the last ones here is, what do you have coming down the line that you are looking forward to, Ben?
Oh, I don't even know how to answer that. I've got a lot of conferences this year. So the short version,
favorites?
Podcast Movement again, Evolutions.
Were you there last year? Did we meet there last year, I think?
We met at Movement, correct.
Okay. That's what I thought. I was trying to make sure I remember
Evolutions in Chicago. Movement, I think's in Dallas. My buddy Justin Shank puts on a event, the Growth Now Summit. A friend and client of mine, Terry Levine, does a mastermind in Mexico. So I'm going to go to Mexico and then probably jet over to Costa Rica afterwards, because why not? A big thing for me is I was very focused on my business from 2020 till 2024-ish. I like to eat. I like to travel. I like to hike. I like to camp. My focus is not it's honestly to get unfocused. My goal for this year is to get out of the house as much as possible and just trust that the right experiences will work along the way. And if I have a worse revenue year, who cares? Mm-hmm. I just want to go have some fun. We only live once, right?
It's not really a hippie mindset. It's more just living your life to the fullest. It's more getting alongside your ikigai in a way. Did you go to Podcast Movement in Denver a couple years ago?
No. So I just started the conference circuit. This is all brand new to me. I started a podcast and never left the house for most of my life. So
you're preaching to the choir here, so I get you. I asked because I was curious to see what you thought differences between the two. I had gone to I don't go to Evolutions. I only go to the big one.
Okay.
And I had gone to the Denver one and then the DC one. And I felt like the DC one wasn't as good as the Denver one, just because it was more top heavy. Kind of by this third day, everything kind of fizzled out.
Fair enough. I mean, I live in New York, so I was able to drive to DC. So the mere convenience made it a good conference. The fact I could drive on in.
There was a lot of people who were telling me that, because DC has a lot of this different people around there, and I'm wondering about the Dallas, because actually the airport in my city only goes to 2 places, Chicago and Dallas. So it might be the only way I can get down there.
We go to Chicago, and then we either go to Chicago or New York, and then it's another flight to get to wherever you have to go.
You get it. And I would definitely consider NAB if you can manage it. It's a huge conference, but they're really pushing more towards the creator world, and that was really an interesting experience.
NAB, yeah, I don't know it.
Yeah, that's the National Association of Broadcasting one I mentioned before.
Oh, gotcha.
It's in Vegas, I think, and it was interesting because I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I thought I thought. I thought I was going to enjoy it less than I did. And I went in there and I met a lot of cool TikTokers, a lot of cool podcasters and YouTubers, and yeah, but I digress. Ben, where can people find you online?
So I'm sure there's notes. I wouldn't be here without Dustin. If you haven't showed love to wherever you found this, subscribe, newsletter, 5 stars, thumbs up, leave a comment, send a DM. A lot of us creators don't get as many DMs as you might expect, so you'll immediately stand out if you send one. Show some love here. Real business connections. If you can't spell it, we have an issue. Just type that in wherever you found this, whether it's YouTube, podcast app, or just Google it. Real business connections. You can find me, but show some love for your boy Dustin first. And I appreciate you having me. This was fun.
It was fun, and definitely the comments is a good point there. I want to always get a comment on each of these videos, so that way I could interact with it. Because one of the first YouTube lessons I ever learned was to like, heart, and pin and reply to comments, and that way you get like 5 levels of engagement on the video. But yeah, one thing. Oh, please.
I was going to say there's comments on the video, which mean a lot, but nothing even means more than sending like an actual DM. Like if you're not connected on a social platform and you haven't let someone know, this has nothing to do with Ben or Dustin. This could be anybody that you support. If you haven't let them know, come out of that shell, let them know, because it really fuels us to create more. We love your likes. We love your subscriptions. We love the reviews, the comments. There's nothing I like more than just, like I said, making a graphic for someone or just telling them that they appreciated you taking the time. I've literally built my entire business and brand on just that. Just being the guy that reaches out. Instead of just thinking about it, I reach out after I think about it. And I think it's a way of life.
I like DMing people who I appreciate and tell them to keep it up. But once again, this has been Albert and Dustin, PolyInnovator, on the PolyTools Creator Spotlight. Thank you for being here.